Show your T-Ball team spirit and buy your hard-working Art Lab team a cup of coffee, which helps fuel purchases of high-octane equipment and T-Ball tech that get poured back into percolating, highly caffeinated content for you. Just go to buymeacoffee.com and search Therapy Bites.
On this episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab.
Hey guys, welcome to another great episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab. What in the world are we going to do with all this baggage? Where are we going to stuff it? Gosh, I don't think the overhead bins are going to hold it all. Well, you know, life is a lot like a plane ride. You have a lot of baggage and there seems to be no place to put it. Well, today in the Art Lab, we have the queen of turning baggage into luggage. She is a life mastery coach and the author of, get this, An Umbrella on a Sunny Day. Join us and learn how to be a better packer of your baggage, turning it into luggage on your life's journey. Coming up on Therapy Bites Art Lab.
Stay tuned following the interview for On the Couch and Off the Rocker, our special guest's psycho-silly analysis by Art Lab's own head cabbager, Dr. Ima Freudnot.
Welcome to Therapy Bites Art Lab, where Dr. Heath and his special guests share real-life stories of helping and healing, fresh from the actual therapy couch, while taking a bite out of common counseling missteps and misconceptions. And now, here's Heath and the T-Ball team.
Hey Donna, welcome to Therapy Bites Art Lab, the home of accurate, realistic thinking, life-affirming beliefs. And today I look forward to talking with you about packing for success. Today we're going to talk about turning baggage into luggage, or the psychology of turning baggage into luggage. And as you heard in the intro, world-class women's coach, and I think just coach in general, Donna Tashjian, is here to help us out with that. Welcome, Donna, and I look forward to a stimulating conversation.
Me too. I've been looking forward to this.
Just to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got from point A to point B. I mean, once upon a time, you were the person that it sounds like maybe was struggling to find some meaning and direction in life. And now you are using that, leveraging all that knowledge that you've worked hard to gain to help others. But how did you get to where you are today?
Well, how long do we have? You know, that could be a story.
We could do it in several episodes, I guess.
We could. You know, the longer you live, the more stories you have. I've got lots of stories.
That's true. I want to tell our viewers and our listeners, I really appreciate Donna being here, because we just talked about the COVID thing. And, you know, it's so weird that we've kind of forgotten. You know, I mean, I've kind of forgotten. That sounds maybe awful, but we had this thing, and it was a huge world-changing scenario, and a lot of people are still dealing with the baggage of COVID and long COVID, and how you get through it. And there's always things coming up in life that we have to deal with. And I think, Donna, that's probably what you do best, is you teach people how to deal with real life, but you first had to live it yourself. And unlike a lot of coaches who've maybe just gone to a class or read a book, you've lived through some very difficult things. And I think that it's really a blessing that you are using that to help so many other people.
I was always the girl that people were coming to and would be telling me their problems. So I think that and you may have experienced that in your life too. It's something that we're just gifted at, being able to have that good listening ear. And for me, even wisdom beyond, it's like, how do I know that? But when you look back on things, on what I've lived through, you begin to realize how you know that. So a little bit, brief story of my earlier beginnings. I grew up in the South, and there was, my family was religious, and having that type of environment. And at the age of 14, someone close to our family hurt me, is the way I describe it. And at 15, I became a mother. So the reason why I mentioned religion is because in There's a difference to me between having a relationship with God and having a religion. And that's why I mentioned that, because there was so much embarrassment and shame and anger and pain and hopelessness and fear and everything. The way that I describe it, and see if you resonate, when we're teenagers, whatever we feel is like times a million. It's intensified. It's so strong. And figuring out, I had a little girl at the age of 15, and I did raise her on my own until I got married. And so learning how to, what did I do and how did I overcome those thoughts of unworthiness, insecurities, self-doubt, not good enough. I could keep going. There's a long list of all of the things. And I went from that to a woman who is now helping women around the world to be able to, as we called it, turn our baggage into luggage. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow, that is amazing. What a great story. And you know, I did not anticipate this coming up, but I'm so glad it did, because a little bit of the backstory of what I deal with from day to day is we live, and I almost hesitate to say this. It's not out of really embarrassment, but in a way it kind of is, because I'm a believer and I live in the, I'm doing air quotes here, you listeners, I live in the Bible Belt. And what you just said, I deal with so routinely. Women and also men, you know, men get sexually abused and assaulted also. Believe it or not, listeners, I have had many men through the years who've undergone this, and that's a bigger secret than women who are sexually assaulted, you know. I mean, and what I deal with, unfortunately, amongst believers is a lack of grace and space. I call it grace and space. I love catchy things, but grace and space, meaning just, I don't know, I guess a deference or a recognition of what this person has gone through, lack of blaming them for it. And I tell you a couple of things that I run into, and you share with me what you think and what you've seen out there, is it's really kind of a don't ask, don't tell kind of thing.
Yep.
We really don't want to know all that stuff. It's just TMI. You know, we want you to come to the altar and, you know, pray and confess everything but that stuff. You know, don't just leave that stuff, you know, under the couch, as we say at Therapy Bites Art Lab, the deep dark recesses of the therapy couch. Leave it under the couch. You've got to have therapy, go therapy, leave it there. And it really gets swept under, as we say, the proverbial couch. And it's almost a blaming kind of thing, that as a Christian, if I am assaulted or abused, it must in some way be my fault. And I know this is a criticism of my, I'm not going to say faith, because it's not a criticism of my faith. It's a criticism of religious organizations that are either ill-equipped to deal or choose not to deal with really real-life things, because it's, I don't know, it's almost, I guess, like Superman's kryptonite. And what I see patients come here with is they've never dealt with it. Number one, I'm holding up my little thumb finger here. Number two, my index finger, is they do think they're the blame. I must have asked for it. I must have caused it. Some will actually convince themselves that they imagine the whole thing, or that they're just making too big a deal out of it.
Yep,
and then here's the fourth thing that really should blow listeners' ears away. And I'm not even sure how to put it, but I'll put it this way. As we grow up, we learn to adapt to the patterns that we're raised in, and people get to thinking that this just happens. This is just normal.
Yes.
Well, goodness, doesn't Paw come in the bedroom at night and fill up everybody? I mean, doesn't mom or dad do this to you. I mean, this horrible sexual thing, and I hate to call it sexual because that's kind of dirtying the whole sexual thing, but I hear all these things that patients say, and the church, and I do hate to say the church. I mean, I just, in my heart, I'm feeling right here as I say that, what a horrible thing to have to say. But it's really time to shine the bright light on this, and for churches to wake up and stand up and start ministering to the needs of people. And I'll get off my sermon stone here in a minute. But I'm just very interested in that because I think we failed people that go through that.
It isn't all the churches, but it is a lot. And it is prevalent in all parts of the world. I've lived in different parts of the United States as well. And it is prevalent, but it reminds me of the story of Jesus, of the woman who was caught in adultery, and he didn't condemn. And so that is our example of how to treat people that have had, by their choices or not choices, where we have made mistakes. Because whoever hasn't can cast the first stone, as Jesus said. Who hasn't made a mistake? Who hasn't done something that's wrong, that they're sorry for? So that is a whole topic that I don't think either one of us thought we were going to go down that path. But
no, I didn't. It just came up, and I thought, wow. I've actually been looking for an entry point to talk some about that. We'll do a whole podcast on it one day, but I wanted to get your experience on that. And then what about, given what you went through, what kind of support did you find was available out there?
I really didn't have much as far as emotional support. The way that one of the biggest reasons that I didn't become what everybody said I would be is there were all those kind of says, well, her life's over. And even as I began to date, oh, she's got a kid, she's easy, all of those kind of labels and feelings and all that kind of stuff that was put. And one of the biggest things is I had a relationship with God. This is, guys, before internet. Okay, there was no cell phones, there was no internet, and so I was completely isolated with basically nobody but God. And so I was an avid reader and went to the library a lot, but there was no people that was really helping me to figure out how to move forward through this. I have a little bit of, well, my mom says sass. You probably can relate to that word. And I had this, I'm just going to prove them all wrong. I don't know how, but what happens in the brain when we say those kind of things. I don't know how, but I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I'm going to prove all the naysayers. I'm going to prove everybody that thought something. And it, my life is an example of that, of the combination of determination that changes when we're not going to accept all of the unworthiness and all of those kind of feelings and say, no, there's going to be something different. And that was, there were times that I hardly had food to eat. I fed my daughter. There were times when I didn't know if I could pay my rent. There was times when my car broke down and I couldn't fix it. There was all kinds of things that occurred along the way, but God never failed, ever. And there was always a way when I had that, asking him for help. One of my favorite scriptures during that time is his seed will not beg for bread. So that I could eat every day. And so it's not that religion I had to actually walk it out and prove that God was faithful through all of that. And as turning your baggage into luggage, where that concept and the steps that I take women through was in prayer. It was an idea that came to me. And it resonates. Everyone hears it. Turn your baggage into luggage, and they immediately understand, because we all have baggage. All of us, right?
Wow, and that just came to you one evening or one moment in prayer,
Yep.
the turning back, it just came to
Yeah.
you. What an incredible inspiration that is. As you say that, I remember the scripture that talks about that they look for God here and they look for God there, and I'm kind of butchering the quote there, but then it was the in the still small voice, that it's not booming thunder,
Right.
Zeus booming thunder from heaven.
Right.
It's really in a still small voice. So you really have to be listening, I think, don't you, to
Yes,
hear that voice. And it sounds like you were listening.
I
And was
was.
prayer was that? How did you pick that up? I mean, we talked about coming from a religious background, and for the listeners, uh, everybody is religious. You have never met
Hmm.
someone who is not religious. Now, they may be religious about cleaning their house, or they may be religious about walking their dog, or they may be religious about flipping people off in traffic. It's a repetitive behavior is what I refer to as religion. And I think faith or an actual relationship with God goes so much deeper than that. And evidently, Donna, that's where you were. Now, I'm interested. I have to ask you this question. In psychology, we talk about behavioral activation. That's you had the sass in you and all that kind of stuff. And then we talk about behavioral deactivation, and I think that applies to faith also, where somebody can get very faith activated, or they can get very faith deactivated. What made the difference? What pivoted you one direction instead of the other?
At a very young, to me, a pretty young age, I had an encounter with God and where I knew He was real. Um, it was at the age of 12. I had no idea that 3 years later I would be a mother, at all. But learning to be able to, when it was one of the worst times of being isolated, but there is something about when there's nobody else but God to turn to that you begin to really listen. And it's a habit that I've developed all of these years. Um, and so learning to be able to get quiet and ask questions and listen. I know now that the books that I chose to read and the time that I spent talking with God changed the way that my brain was processing what I saw about myself. I created a new image of where I saw myself going. And one of the steps when I teach my workshops of turn your baggage into luggage is begin to see and understand that all things can work for your good. And when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like it. But everything can work for your good and nothing is wasted. And when you begin to, I'll use the word meditate, to repeat this over to yourself, to begin to visualize that in your mind, it changes what your perception is, it changes what you see, and it changes what you expect and what you look for, and which changes everything. So I'm sure you love that statement.
I love that statement, and especially because there's all kinds of wonderful neuroscience behind it.
Yes.
There's a term called long-term potentiation, or LTP, where neurons, brain cells, actually get better and better and better at what they're doing the more they're given a certain task to do. If you swing a golf club enough and you swing it properly, your brain actually creates more brain cells that want to do the same thing and even get better at it, and it develops a pattern of swinging the golf club. The same thing with shooting a basketball, driving a car, working at a certain job, being a mason, being a carpenter. Any job you do more of, the brain actually leverages more brain cells by reassigning them to that task, and also creating new brain cells. By the way, some listeners, as you may be familiar with some of this, is called neurogenesis, and then a new handshake between brain cells. That's called synaptogenesis. And so apply that, you believers out there, to your relationship with God. Your very brain cells can get better and better and better at listening, looking for God in your life. And Donna, tell me, because I think maybe this has been your experience, the more you're looking, the more you'll understand that God has been there all along. He's been working in the background. Did you see that in your life, that God's been there all along?
Absolutely. My husband and I just celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. That is so odd. In this day and time, that is so odd in an era of what I call disposable relationships. If a relationship isn't Burger King, come here, have it your way, people just want to get rid of it. Yeah. They want a Burger King relationship.
We were reviewing, because if the chances of us meeting were, I don't even know the exponential, but it was pretty close to impossible. He grew up in upstate New York. I'm a Southern girl. And also remember the isolation. So when we met, I had started working full time, and I had begun to take college courses at night. And he was in the military, and we both happened to take the same college course at night. We would have never encountered each other, never met, other than the sequence of events that set up to that. And so, and going back to your thought of changing what you see, how many of us have bought a new car and all of a sudden see that car everywhere? It shows that what you begin to look for, you find more of. And gratitude and blessings are that way. When you begin to expect them and look for them, you begin to find them. It's a huge part of changing. So understanding that all things can work for your good. Another one of my favorite declarations are another huge thing, because we know how that affects our thoughts and what we're thinking about. But one of my favorite is, my past does not determine my future. Wow. And then I add a little phrase to it, unless I decide to let it.
Oh my goodness, that is so well said. You're exactly right. It's really kind of spooky. I know we're past Halloween, but we did some Halloween episodes. But this is very spooky, because your example of the cards, I have used that nearly every day for the past couple decades. That the more you look for something, the more you're going to find that something. That's amazing, and I appreciate that. But tell us more about how did you put it, the declaration? What was your phrase?
My past does not determine my future unless I let it.
And you call that a declarative phrase?
Yes. Affirmations, declarations.
Okay, I love that. I love the declarative statement there. We literally do create our own reality. Now, I'm not one of the woo-woo crowd that says, name it, claim it, I want $1 million, and $1 million is going to appear in my mailbox or something. I don't think $1 million would fit in my mailbox unless it was a check, which you guys are welcome to leave. I'll give you my address. Just drop your $1 million off my mailbox. Take turns, be nice, line up, and I'll be grateful for that. But no, I mean, that's not going to happen. What I'm talking about is from my side of the equation, when you declare something, that becomes a target, that becomes a goal, and then behind the scenes, that opens up your brain to being able to work toward that goal, work toward that target. And if you have no target, you're guaranteed to never hit it. You'll never hit a target that you don't have. And making a declaration, I find it incredibly valuable, because once you envision where you want to be, then your brain leverages resources to heading you in that direction. There may be twists and turns. Say you want to go to Santa Barbara, California, a beautiful area. If I'm ever going to be homeless, I want to be homeless in Santa Barbara, California. Beautiful area. But you might take a lot of twists and turns, but that declaration to that's where I'm headed leverages resources to get you there. And you may not know how in the moment.
Absolutely.
But you're at least headed the right direction. At what point in your life, Donna, did you decide this is what you wanted to do? When did that vision, that target become clear for you?
Well, I have been coaching in different capacities in organizations I was in, all kinds of things. We would have called it mentoring in those days,
Ah,
or discipleship for over, I don't know, 25, 30 years at this point. But about 10 years ago, I hit a pivotal moment in my life. I had went to work for a nonprofit organization that I thought was going to give me the opportunity to do uh, what I understood as my passion of helping and supporting people through life's difficulties. And at that time, I had put, oh, this is it. This is going to be it. And it wasn't. 2 years later, after working there for a while, I was let go. And it was one of those days where you can remember what you were wearing, you can remember the time, you can remember the weather, it was March 31st. It was at 11:30 in the afternoon, and it was doing this rain sleety thing outside that it does sometimes does here in Michigan, and that weather matched my face as I left that place.
oh my.
And I'm embarrassed to tell people, but I wrote in my journal, I feel like a piece of trash nobody wants. I don't have any value. And then I'm mad at myself because I've been helping women for years. And why is this stuff coming up that I'm feeling this way, etc. And so the next soul searching period of years that occurred from there, Vibrant Living was born. I had so limited myself from this other organization that nowhere did what I'm doing today at all. And through that, going back to God, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do now that I'm all grown up? One of those moments, and Vibrant Living was born, and all of the programs that I have was born in that process of figuring out how to really live vibrantly, to quit limiting myself to what other people thought I was able to do, which I was still doing without realizing it, and learning to be able to help women. I may move into men. I deal with so much sexual trauma that I tend to stick with women, but learning to be able to live vibrantly was what happened. I say now that March 31st was the worst day. Well, not the worst, but one of the worst days. And one of the best days of my life because I learned how to live vibrantly through that.
Wow. And did that come to you all in that moment? Was that all
No.
in that moment? Did it come to you fully birthed in that moment? Or was that
No.
just the ignition and it kind of developed along the way?
It was the event that caused me to ask different questions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask different questions, you tap into the spirit and you get different answers.
Ah,
Your intuition, whatever words. So what am I supposed to do next? Where am I? And I would begin it was like breadcrumbs. Do this, then do this, and do this. And I just kept taking those small steps. It's what I did before through other times in my life, but it was clearer, I guess you could say, that this is the way you move through trauma, is begin to another disappointment in your life. Learning how to forgive. That's a whole episode in itself.
ah, yes, it is. Forgiveness.
And learning what that forgiveness really is. And it isn't what we think it is, and learning how to move and to quit limiting your own beliefs about what you're capable of, because we are capable of so much more than we can understand. One of the mentors that I had when I was going through this time said to me, and this goes for everybody listening, she said, Donna, you are a present. And the person who's going to be most surprised when the present is open is you. And that is true for all of us as we discover what we're capable of, what we can believe, instead of being so fearful. One of my clients said, Donna, you help turn fear into excitement. And I love that phrase, because what I used to be afraid of is now what I'm excited about. And
wow,
it isn't
such as what?
wealth and helping people and
Uh-huh.
all of the I mean, the abundance that is available to us when we begin to really believe instead. I mean, that's what fear is. It's just believing in the negative. It's still unseen, right? Faith is the evidence of things unseen. And so is fear. It's
You're exactly right.
And so I get to choose life, choose to live vibrantly, that I want to choose. If I'm going to choose, I'm going to go for the good. Why go for the bad?
There's and that so sassy component your mother spoke of.
Just a bit.
but you know, as you say that, my mind goes back to the behavioral activation versus behavioral deactivation. And my question is, why not just go to bed? Why not just go in your bedroom and lock the door? Why not just hide under the covers? What is it for you? I mean, how can listeners tap into some of that sass that your mom spoke of? Where does that come from anyway?
I don't really know the answer to that, but I'm not saying there weren't days that I didn't stay in bed and pull the covers over my head. And I think we have to give ourselves permission to process in whatever way we process. And that there shouldn't be judgment attached to those days. I just didn't want to stay there. One of the best ways is, when I remember laying in bed one day, is, well, if I stay in this place, who will I be? Well, I will be someone my kids and grandkids won't really be proud of. I'll be grumpy. I'll be scared. I'll be probably poor. I won't be able to help people. I won't be happy. Is that who I want to be? Well, if I get out of bed and try and just take one step, who could I be? Well, I'd be a woman who perseveres. I'd be a woman who has sass, we use that word. It's like a woman who doesn't give up. A woman who always believes the best in everyone. A woman who will be known for having faith when it looks impossible and seeing the results. So I have a choice. Do I want to be the woman who stays in bed and get those results? Or do I want to be the woman who gets up, takes a shower, and takes one step today?
For full show notes and transcript of today's episode, go to therapybites.podbean.com.
The Therapy Bites podcast is HIPAA compliant. No identifying patient information will be disclosed by Therapy Bites podcast hosts or Therapy Bites podcast guests without permission from patients or guardians. All personal stories are de-identified in order to comply with HIPAA, the NASW Code of Ethics, and the ethical principles of psychologists and Code of Conduct. Fresh from the therapy couch and from the deep dark recesses, stories may involve exploding preconceived notions and topics uncomfortable to underthinkers and small farm animals. Audience discretion and duct taping your head for safety is advised. Concrete-headed Kool-Aid drinking humans assume all risks associated with any possibility of choking to death on the accurate, realistic thoughts presented in the art lab. This is natural selection, and Therapy Bites podcast management and hosts are not responsible.
Doc Heath on Fresh from the Therapy Couch. Therapists, if they're also a veterinarian, can fix your cat, they can fix your dog, but they cannot fix your kid. Your kid is a product of their environment. Therefore, the best place to begin is an evaluation and possible restructuring of the environment where they live to help your child attain their highest practicable level of functioning. Your therapist can never move into your home and raise your child for you, but they can certainly coach you on the tools and techniques essential for raising a psychologically healthy child. Start where the child is, look at the causal factors. If you look close enough, you're going to find that it all revolves around most usually environmental factors. Change those, and you're on the road to healing and success toward a healthy child. Doc Heath, Fresh from the Therapy Couch. Catch us on the next segment and enjoy the rest of the episode.
You're listening to Therapy Bites Art Lab, bite-sized therapy for your brain with Dr. Heath and the TBAL team. The best advice on the net. No copay required.
You're slipping beneath the cushions of your bobble-headed psychotherapist's couch, leaving behind empty, echoing, cushy, comforting, pseudo-psychological claptrap, moving into a deeper dimension of your own mind, where distorted thinking, hurting, hopelessness, and regret evaporate into clarity, healing, renewed hope, and newfound resilience. That's the podcast sign up ahead. Your next stop, Therapy Bites Psych Secrets.
Hey guys, Doc Heath here for another segment of Psych Secrets, and I'm in disguise if you're watching this on video, because there's lots of folks out there in the psychology field that do not want you to know this information that we bring you. Today's topic is vulnerability. Vulnerable is what you may be to tornadoes and tooth decay. There's nothing vulnerable about being genuine in a relationship, about having emotions, about sharing your dreams, about sharing your nightmares, about sharing things which you get nervous about based on inaccurate thinking. Get over the vulnerability thing. Vulnerability, again, is for tornadoes and tooth decay, not relationships. You aren't in danger of anything sharing your deepest thoughts, your deepest beliefs, your deepest hopes, dreams, and wishes. That does not make you vulnerable. That makes you human. Come back for the next segment of Psych Secrets.
Once again, Doc Heath rips the cushions from the couch, dishes the dirt, lets the cat out of the bag, uncorks the bottle, letting the genie escape, and blows the lid off of another of the universe's Psych Secrets.
Live the art life. Become a T-Ball Teammate Inner Circle supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/therapybites.
Here's Heath and the T-Ball team.
Who do you want to be?
That is so fantastic, because you know, in the art lab we talk to so many people that they opt for the behavioral deactivation. I mean, going through what you went through, that takes a lot of resources. That's very de-energizing, and I don't want to minimize that, because so many people that listen to such programs think that people like you and I are just floating around with their head in the clouds, and it's just not realistic. They'll say, oh, you know, Donna, that's, you know, God bless you, whatever, that's great for you. Dr. Heath, fantastic, you know, but you don't live on planet Earth. And I want people to understand that we really, really do. And like you, there's days like, for me, that I just, well, I don't hide under the covers, but I call it a chill out period.
Yes.
I'm a little bit behavioral deactivated, but that is intentional. I had the intent to do that because it gives me time to reset, rethink, refuel. My reset, rethink, refuel is usually on a Saturday after a jam-packed week where I've had people who may have a substance use disorder, they may have some other psychiatric disorder, they may have yelled at me, they, you know, all kinds of difficult things might have happened. I might have been threatened. That's part of the job. And then my reset, refuel, rethink period is with a big bowl of air pop popcorn. It's good fiber, by the way, and better than a big bowl of Snickers or something. And I will give myself that time knowing that it is time limited and being clear what comes next.
Yes.
There's not more of the same. I'm very clear what comes next. And this gets back to the vision, the intention, and the goal setting that Donna and I were talking about. It's okay to have those moments, just as long as I would recommend two things. Don't beat yourself up over it, because one of the main things with sexual abuse, sexual trauma is self-directed disgust. Self-directed disgust. Now, you listeners can't see this, but I'm taking my right hand and I'm pointing above my left ear, which is an area called the insular cortex, which is what keeps us from eating things that can make us sick. I'll be grossed here for a moment, like feces from the toilet. And the reason we don't do that is our disgust cortex or insular cortex keeps us from doing that. But with sexual trauma, we will direct that disgust mechanism toward ourselves and tell ourselves all kinds of nasty things about ourselves, such as this must have happened to me because of some type of personal deficit. And Donna, did you have some moments of self-directed disgust that you had to deal with?
Perhaps. It's been a few years. I don't remember having it for very much at all.
Okay.
That type of thing. I don't, but I definitely encounter women every day that do have
The self-directed disgust.
Yeah, it's learning to love themselves.
Yeah.
In all of that kind of stuff is definitely something that it helps people through it. But it's learning to be able to love yourself and to let the past go is a huge. You talked about judgment, and one of my phrases that I perhaps have coined, I don't know who, maybe somebody said it originally, is whatever you judge, you retain. And let's say I'm an addict and there's addicts to all kinds of things. Addicts to Netflix, addicts to drugs, addicts to workaholics. There's all kinds of things, addictive behaviors that we do to cope. But if I am judging myself while I'm eating the popcorn or the bowl of ice cream or maybe the whole carton of ice cream, and I'm like, why can't I quit doing this? And whatever I judge, I also retain. It doesn't leave by judging it, by being critical of yourself. It doesn't cause behavior to change. You actually hold on to it. The same goes for, let's take women who had an alcoholic father. They marry an alcoholic. Why did I do that? They judge their dad. And they end up retaining and repeating behavior. And it's normal, as I do air quotes, that you said, it was normal. And so you begin to seek it out without realizing it. And so all of that, so learning how to, I say, change my judgment into curiosity. Why am I eating this whole thing of ice cream? And why am I eating the whole bowl of popcorn? Because I've had a really busy week and I need to recharge, and it's okay. And we begin to look at things with curiosity instead of judgment. And that's when the mind and your spirit gives an opportunity for behavior to begin to change.
Curiosity, one of my favorite things in the whole world. There's a book that I just read, and I'm so sorry I cannot remember the author's name, but he's a big name out there. He's actually Ron Howard's production partner. Who is that? Brian? I can't think of his name. I'm sorry. It leaves me for the moment. But it's a book about curiosity, and he talks about how this is what really made his career, was just being curious. And we teach that all the time, is to ask yourself better questions. I'm sitting here with yet another drink in my hand. Bring your attention to that. Don't drink it mindfully. I mean, you can go ahead and drink it. I mean, I don't believe in drinking, and that's not a religious thing. I don't have more neurons to waste, and when I drink, it kills brain cells. And why would I want to do that? And so I'm a teetotaler, a coffee totaler, actually. But address it with curiosity. If I'm sitting here eating through a big carton of ice cream, address it with curiosity. And here's one question I like to ask people: is ask yourself, how well is what I'm doing in this moment serving me in the path that I'm on? Back to Santa Barbara. If I want to get to Santa Barbara, is eating ice cream going to get me to Santa Barbara? Is drinking another drink going to get me there? I mean, it could be, pick your destination. But if your destination is a clear, unfettered brain when you're in your 70s, take my word for it, neither the ice cream nor the alcohol will get you there. A little tip for viewers: guess where cognitive decline begins in the body? And it's not in the vault of your skull. Cognitive decline begins in your liver. Your liver is the oil filter for your brain. You clog up your oil filter, your brain doesn't work too well. But you have to approach it with an intention of direction. And Donna, this seems like this may be what you teach those that you coach. How do you get them on track? Really, how do you get them off the track that they're on and on a track toward a healthier life? What are some of your tips, tricks, and techniques for doing that?
Well, one of the statements is what I said, is begin to do what you said, is instead of in those moments, go ahead and eat the ice cream if you want. We'll change the behavior later, but begin to understand why you're doing it. Be curious on what need is this ice cream meeting, and is it really meeting it? And if it's not, what are some other ways? I mean, there's all kinds of things, the reason why we eat, to soothe ourselves, we're feeling lonely, we're feeling bored, we're feeling all kinds of things. And what needs speaking, what is the need that's there that's telling me that this is my learned behavior to meet that need, but is it really, this is one of my statements, is how's that working for you?
I love that one.
Just pause and how's that working for you?
People don't think about that. People do things and they're not working, but they just don't bring their attention to the fact that it's not getting them anywhere.
Yeah. So learning to say, how is this working for me?
Mm-hmm.
How is doing this behavior getting me to really where I want to go? You just become more intentional. If you're going to eat the ice cream, the bowl of popcorn, whatever it is, do it with intention, not a subconscious behavior that you've learned that's not really working.
That's so important what you just said, unconscious behavior. And I think that gets back to some of the baggage that we're talking about. The brain loves shortcuts. I use example, imagine having to be very aware of moving your right foot from the gas pedal to the brake every time you braked. Okay, I'm going to pick up my right foot, move it to the left about, 6 inches. I'm going to press down on the brake. All of a sudden, bang, you've already had a wreck because that's too long of a process. The brain makes a shortcut out of that where it sublimates it to an implicit level, processing outside of our awareness. And the brain can do the same thing with drinking, eating ice cream, yelling at your spouse, yelling at your kids. One of my favorite terms is, my dad would call it a $5 term, is catastrophizing. People become master catastrophizers. They become masters at self-victimization. It's just happening to me because the universe is punishing me, or, well, it's just me. This is just my luck. And I find that the brain puts such things on autopilot, and it really does become a habit, an implicit habit. What are some of the main habits that you find people need to change in your work with them?
Well, to me, habits go, I back up a little bit because my habits come from how I see myself.
Ah.
And habits are really identity based. If I see myself as healthy and taking care of my brain and all those kind of things, then I eat accordingly.
Ah.
If I see myself as lovable and I like myself, I take care of myself accordingly. I also conduct myself differently in those kind of ways. So to me, that's where I move. I'm really big on what I call identity theft, because we have all had our identity stolen by, or we allowed it to be stolen by labels that have been placed on us. All kinds of restrictive labels, constrictive type of things. And how do you see yourself? And so getting people's identity back to who they really are is the key to changing habits. If I just work on changing your habits without changing what you believe about yourself, you'll change it for a little bit, but it won't be long term. So in the beginning, I don't care, in air quotes, what you do. I want to know why you're doing it. and what's the beliefs are behind that. When we can get to that, your habits will follow.
That's beautiful. That is so beautifully said. I so much agree with that. What we do is based on who we decide that we are. And I see people struggle with that, as you routinely see people struggle with that. And that comes from, part of that is telling ourselves nasty things about ourselves. None of us walk on air, certainly not water, as Jesus Christ did, nor are we meant to. But what's the quote, Mr. Rogers? I'll kind of butcher this quote too, but there has never, ever been someone like you in the entirety of the universe, and there never, ever will be someone like you in the entirety of the universe, which to me means that everybody listening to this, you are absolutely, positively meant to exist in your own little U, Y-O-U, your own little U-shaped space. And pulling from another quote from something I recommend everybody watches near Christmas. You can go and start watching it now, by the way. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. And without you, I won't do a spoiler alert here, but without you, what a great hole it would leave in the universe. Yep. There has never, ever, ever, and I would look forward to a debate. You guys that listen regularly know that I love my social media smackdown debates. I love a good debate. I'm a philosopher at heart, undergraduate in philosophy. But you have never met a person who is a waste. You've never met a person who is not meant to exist. And you might say, oh, but they did this, and they did this horrible thing and that horrible thing. Well, yeah, but that's behavior. That's what they decided to do with their life. It did not have to be that way. They could have taken some of Donna's advice and capitalized on their usefulness and capitalized on forming good self-concepts and capitalized on forming adaptive habits, and they chose not to. But that doesn't have to be you. Earlier, Donna talked about a package, a gift, a present, and I like to talk. I like to speak that every moment of your presence is a gift. A little pun there, but every moment is a gift. It really just decides on, or it just depends on what you decide to do with it, And gosh, there's something I want to go back to there, Donna, and it has just escaped me here. But habit formation. Habit formation comes from repetition, but I do love what you had to say, that everything that we do is going to be rooted in who we decide to be. And what are some everyday practices that you find are valuable for people to take up that help them really sculpt their opinion, their view of themselves, maybe some everyday practices that they could engage in?
One of the biggest ones that I encourage my clients to do is to create a gratitude journal. I have 3 journals I recommend. They can be all in the same one, but do it every day. A gratitude journal. What are you thankful for when you wake up and in the end of the evening? And keep it all day long. It's like, what are you thankful for? Gratitude changes it. Well, we don't have time. It changes everything. We'll leave it at that. Another one is an imagination journal. What would you like your life to look like? What would you like? What are your dreams? What are your goals? Because I continually work on my vision. Because every day I encounter circumstances or people's opinion or news or something that tells me what I think, what I dream is not going to happen. And so I continually work and I create an imagination journal. What would you love to have? How do you want to be? What would it feel like if you were there? Because it changes who you are, changes what you attract, and it changes what's going on in your brain. And the third one is a forgiveness journal.
Oh my.
And every day, is there anybody, I ask God, is there anything or anyone that I should need to forgive today? It's a daily practice. Because every day, the person who took your parking spot, if you keep your heart pure, It opens up everything. It could be big things, it could be little things. Can I get a little bit graphic just a minute about forgiveness?
Absolutely, please.
Okay.
We
So
love graphic
forgiveness,
stuff.
forgiveness, every day your body has to cleanse itself because we eat food and things that are not useful to us, and we go to the bathroom. And every day, forgiveness is the same way. We collect things, things happen to us, and we cleanse our heart and soul. And so it is, and it needs to be a daily practice.
I love that. That's fantastic. Here's an addition to that I often talk about and recommend to people regarding sleep is what is one of the biggest things that you accomplish while you're sleeping? Well, when you sleep, your brain ramps up the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid through the brain and empties out toxins. And without sleep, that purging process doesn't happen, and your brain becomes a bit of a cesspool. The more you sleep, the more you cleanse your brain. It's not just, whatever, to get some shut-eye. It's not just to rest in general. It's not just to get your 8 hours. It's really about cleansing the brain. There's a whole purging process. And I love Donna's example because that's exactly right. When you sweat, your sweat comes through pores and cleanses your pores. When you go to the bathroom, that's emptying waste products. As I'm exhaling, I am exhaling carbon dioxide. Everything about the body is about cleansing, and I do it. We teach and preach that forgiveness has the same effect. But one thing I want to point out just real quick, I have a video on for Father's Day that I put up last Father's Day. It's on YouTube. You listeners can go and watch that, but it's all about forgiveness. One thing forgiveness is not is feeling better. People think if I don't feel better, or if I still have these non-preferred emotions, then I must not have forgiven. But that's incorrect. You can feel angry and still forgive. Forgiveness is not the absence of anger. Forgiveness is not the absence of sadness. It is not the absence of disgust. It does not mean that you will ever agree with what that person did to another or did to you. Forgiveness is understanding that the person you're forgiving no longer presents a threat to you. And you don't have to keep planning their demise in some way or hoping that something terrible befalls them. You can simply be unhappy that whatever happened and realize that you're safe. And that's another part of forgiveness is the realization that I am safe. And safety, by the way, is not a feeling. There's no feeling that will tell you that you're safe. Just because you're on a 747 and you're anxious doesn't mean you're in danger. And in our line of work, people really begin to connect, I took my two index fingers together here, begin to connect safety and emotion. I have patients regularly that I give them a pop quiz before they graduate to a certain return to duty process that I do for the DOT, and I ask them a trick question. And here's a spoiler alert, by the way. If any of you folks are listening, I'm giving you the answer right now. Okay, so write this down. What feeling indicates that you're safe? And I think I did say that's a trick question. It is a trick question. There is no feeling that is evidence that I'm safe. There's also no absence of a feeling that indicates I'm safe. I don't have to be absent fear to be safe. I can be very fearful and still be very safe. And there's a little bit of neuroscience for you. The presence of an emotion, fear, can exist simultaneously with the belief that I'm safe. I have fear, but I know that I'm safe. And that can become a habit too. I think in my I don't have a gratitude journal, but I practice gratitude routinely by looking for things I can be grateful for. And this may be a bit of a curveball for lots of you listening, but I have gratitude for fear. You know why? Because I've gone to New York. If you don't have fear in New York, you may get hit by a city bus. you know, look out, bus. And but that doesn't mean that I'm not safe. It just kind of is a little red light on my dashboard that lets me know that, hey, look out for city buses. I actually almost did get hit by a city bus in New York. It just blew right by me. I almost stepped off the curb. I would not be here today, but something alerted me. Maybe it was fear, and I stepped back, and here comes a city bus. I don't know. Maybe it was the hand of God pulling me back up on the curb. The psychology of turning baggage into luggage. And what are some other tips that we can leave our listeners with here today, Donna, as we wrap up our episode? You've been so kind putting up with our whole team being sick today, and some of you listeners, you hear the coughing in the background. We don't have a whole crowd of people coughing. That's just Debbie and Sarah. They're our coughing crowd this morning, and if you hear that in the background, that's their cleansing process, trying to get out all the phlegm and everything out of their lungs, and they're here running the cameras and the little widgets and gadgets for me. But Donna, what are some ways that we can further help our listeners maybe put some shoe leather on it this week and throughout the Christmas holidays to turn whatever baggage they may have with family members? You know, holidays are a tough time because we're around people we're not around a lot sometimes. About turning some of that baggage related to family members into luggage?
Well, set your expectations of how you want to be is one of the things I tell people, irregardless to whether you have Uncle Joe or Aunt Sue or whoever it is that, you know, may be cantankerous. And choose how you want to behave and how you want to respond. Because just because they try to push your buttons doesn't mean you have to allow them to push your buttons. So learning to, visualize it ahead of time. This is what they say, because they probably say the same thing every year. Why aren't you married? What kind of job you got? You know, et cetera, whatever they say, and how you're going to reply ahead of time, the way you want to be, is a big thing to reduce the stress of how you choose you want, because you get to choose your response, irregardless of people being, you know, mean or whatever they are. The other thing I wanted to mention about forgiveness is you talked about it not being a feeling. The way that I word it, it's the same thing, just a little bit different wording, is forgiveness is a choice of my will. And my emotions will follow.
That's right.
And so when I learn that it's a spiritual force, that I am aligning myself with God and goodness, when I choose to forgive, when people don't deserve it, all of the things, I jokingly have actually said, you know, that scripture that says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And then there's the other ones. It's like, who will I send? You know, that's totally mixing up the two, but God send me, you know, kind of a thing.
I love that.
So learning that forgiveness. So there's 4 basic steps for turning baggage into luggage that I teach in my workshop. The first one is realizing that, understanding that everything can work for my good. So many times those cantankerous, mean friends, relatives, whoever push our buttons are actually just exposing what we believe about ourselves. And if we can use that to go, what am I believing in this moment about myself? Then it begins to change how your identity. So understanding that all things can work for your good. The other thing is forgiveness, which we've talked a lot about today. Getting support and getting help. We really weren't meant to do this alone. You and I both do this for a living, of helping people. But so many of us, when we're injured, we isolate. You know, that don't ask, don't tell stuff. We keep it all hidden and secret. Find somebody safe. Probably not a best friend, because they're not always the best way to really get better. I'm sure you'll agree with that too.
And completely agree. Yeah.
So they're not always the best.
Don't turn your friends and family into therapists and coaches.
Oh.
It's not a great idea.
No, it's not a great idea. And it doesn't get the results we want, because you probably tried that and that's not working. So get support and get help, and know that, you know, these quote simple steps, but when we begin to practice them consistently, it changes the way we think, it changes what we expect, and it changes what we receive.
Amen. And amen, listeners and viewers, means so be it. And I very, very much agree. What wonderful, wonderful advice. Donna, thank you so much for being here. What a stimulating discussion. And I really hope you listeners take this through the holidays. Address your get-togethers with the intention of what you want to get out of it. And the best thing you can get out of it, I think, is what you decide to put into it. Instead of going expecting to be served by everyone else's behavior giving you what you want, why not let's get together for the holidays with the intention of giving others what they need from us. The more you focus on perhaps serving others, the more you can put the old baggage behind you and turn it into traveling luggage toward a healthier destination. Donna, you've been so wonderful. We got to have you back sometime and talk about a whole show about some of that other dark recesses beneath the couch stuff that we just barely touched on. But we wish you happy holidays and all the best to you and your family. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Welcome to On the Couch and Off Our Rocker with Dr. Ima Freudnot, where we review our special guest's Therapy Bites Art Lab episode, Psychomolarchy Scale Assessment Results. That's PMS for short.
Ms. Donna Tashjian's PMS performance places her in the 13th percentile on the PMS's BIT, baggage in tow scale. This indicates an amazingly low degree of cabbaging onto horrendously sabotaging historical hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Ms. Tashjian's cortical crevices possess a tremendous tendency towards superpowered spiritual intelligence and enlightened positivity-centric interactivity. Overall, the PMS's psychosillymetric assessment results present a picture of an individual with a promising proclivity predisposed to a life of joy, fulfillment, and peace, who releases these torrential implicit bursts of brain-based brilliance into impulses intended at bettering the lives of others. This superbly stress-resilient soul likely has a promising prognosis of shining success in the near future, unless she allows the deviousness of distorted thoughts, human to us all, to seep into her splendiferously accurate thought structures. It is my confabulated consideration that Ms. Donna Tashjian persists in pondering the promising physiognomy of her psyche, prying into it psychomologically and exercising diligently any diabolical distortions. Ms. Tashjian best be prescribed no less than a QD dose of jubilant joy, an adjunct PRN dose of Silience RE, to curtail catastrophic cognitions. Dr. Ima Freudnot, Chief Shrinkstigator, Therapy Bites Art Lab.
Grab some of this episode's guest merchandise, specially designed to help keep this episode's message top of mind in your life. Don't forget friends and family members who could use an Art Lab mental boost too. Just go to therapybites.myshopify.com.
Hey, T-Ballers. Thanks so much for being with us today. If we brought value to your day, show us some love by leaving your positive feedback and inviting some friends to listen in and join the T-Ball team. Next time on Therapy Bites Art Lab.
Hey guys, look out. Here's Doc Heath. We have a special treat for you guys on today's Therapy Bites Art Lab, as we have an episode called Big Vision, Psychology of Transformation. Do you struggle with direction in life? Do you have problems maintaining your course of progress? Do life hurdles often get in the way? Well, on deck, we have a guest that can help you improve your vision. And I'm not talking about reading glasses the way I have on right now if you're watching this on YouTube. Stow your meal trays, make sure your seat is in its upright position, and buckle those seat belts. Dr. Fox is in the art lab today to rocket your life into the stratosphere of success.
Government legal gobbledygook. Therapy Bites is not intended as a diagnostic or as an alternative to professional clinical treatment. Resources and advice are for information and entertainment purposes only. Brought to you by someone saying things you don't like? Tape that nagging loudmouth shut. Government-approved speech tape. Gas tape. Now available at your local hardware store. Therapy Bites Art Lab is not an approved, endorsed, authorized, butt-kissing affiliate of the United States Special Offense Assessment Police. SOAP for short. Warning. Consumption of Therapy Bites Art Lab content by Kool-Aid drinking, stinking, thinking, social media, pseudo-psychological pushing, wacky woke, anti-free speech, mumbo-jumbo advocates may cause spontaneous internal skull combustion, stomach discomfort, and/or laxative effects. Allergy warning. Therapy Bites is manufactured in a facility that challenges nutty distortions, processes nuggets of accurate, realistic thinking, and life-affirming beliefs. This is the audio version of the legal fine print. Why are you still listening to this when you can catch the next great episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab with a good friend or family member? Really? Are you still there? This is getting silly. Move on to the next psychologically thrilling episode of the best advice on the net. No copay required.
Me eat copay.
Yeah, with Dr. Heath and the TBAL team. Go ahead, don't be podgoraphobic. Scoot, scoot, scoot. On to the next episode.